Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Badass Records, which, in case you were wondering, is a podcast featuring conversations with folks about their lives and some of their favorite music along the journey. Where can you find the podcast? Streaming audio on your favorite platforms. There's YouTube. All the episodes live on the site, which is badassrecordspodcast.com. New episodes drop Thursday mornings. You can follow the pod on Instagram and Twitter. If you do go to the website, badassrecordspodcast.com, make sure you click the merch tab and shop around. You might find something cool for yourself or a loved one. And if you want to be on the show, hit me up, please, at badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com. It's badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com. Come sit with me. Appreciate you stopping by. So like I said, all goes well. This would be episode 74 of Badass Records Podcast. And I have the fortune of hanging with Mr. Adam Browning. I have it right there. Adam Browning.
Yes, sir.
Cool. How's it going?
You know, I've had better times. I've had worse.
I hear you.
We're sitting down here going to talk about some music, so that's a good time.
That's right. That's right.
It is what I do.
Right.
For the majority. Well, it's my good pastime, we'll call it, because I do have a normal job.
Same. Yeah.
So yeah.
So you, as far as that goes, that I know of, you're half of ChemTrails with Adam and Sean.
Yes, and that is correct.
You guys air on Counterclockwise KC internet radio Tuesdays? Is it Tuesdays?
We do Tuesdays at 7 and 10.
Right.
And those are our new shows come out bi-weekly. So anytime someone tunes in, it could be a new one, it could be a replay.
Okay. And it's been going since like mid-21, is that right? Or
yeah, we're almost exactly 2 years.
Okay.
Because we started in the summer, so
nice.
It would be, I want to say we were in the middle of July of 21. So we're by the time this airs,
right.
ChemTrails will be 2 years.
Nice. Well, happy early / on time / belated birthday to the pod.
Appreciate that.
Now, is there another lane of music that you're in that you know are invested in beyond that particular pod that I don't know about?
I am not. I mean, I tinker playing with the guitar, and I use the term playing very loosely.
I hear you.
There's no true skill there by any stretch. And ChemTrails with Adam and Sean, it's a side project, and that combined with some personal things and like I said, the normal 40-hour work week
sure.
makes it kind of tough to do anything else, especially if I want to go to shows,
right.
which is I love it,
yes.
and it's that's also how I've helped get some of the interviews that we've done on the podcast. Was from being at shows and
approaching people.
Well, either approaching them or just being around where I'm in a situation where it's a comfortable,
right?
You know,
yeah,
a comfortable question.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not sure how much you feel about this, but especially if I'm wanting to do interviews with musicians, I don't want to come off or build that reputation as that guy. That's that's going to be pestering someone or.
Yes.
Or going out of the way and just being, even if it's unintentional, being obnoxious. So I'm purposely trying not to do that. But being around shows and some of the smaller venues, you go to a Knuckleheads, you're going to have a few more opportunities right. where the band, smaller bands in particular, may come out and talk to you.
Yeah. Right.
In that situation, you're in natural conversation. That's a lot more respectable and appropriate. Right. In my eyes.
Right. Well,
and with social media, you can reach out, and if they have a minute, they can answer.
Right.
As long as you're not being over the top or overbearing per se. You know, send one or two feelers out. If they don't respond, call it good.
I know.
If they do respond, like Jared Nichols, our first guest, I sent one message.
Nice.
Month and a half later, because we were still very new at that time.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you go look at our stuff, we don't have a ton of followers. And our first airings were on KCTK radio before Sean had started Counterclockwise Radio.
Right.
So incredibly hard for anyone outside to have a feel for our audience.
Yeah.
If we have any kind of reach, if it's worth their time per se.
Right.
So I sent the message out just on a whim, thinking, one message, I'm not being that guy. What's going to do, ignore me or say no?
I know.
Shoots a message, hey, sounds great.
Yeah.
Talk to my manager. And at that point, I sent Sean a message. I said, well, we're in. You got any advice? He goes, I've never talked to a band manager before. I don't. So we automatically...
Kill him with kindness, I suppose.
We automatically went into uncharted waters.
Right, yeah.
Turns out Jared Nichols is one of the coolest cats you will ever meet. Heck of a guitar player. And like I said, super nice. He still follows us and likes us and talks to us once in a while.
Awesome.
So I just, out of nowhere, being able to reach out and using what I, at that moment considered good manners,
Yeah.
It just worked out, and it's turned into a pretty good thing. And that also, I got to see him live, and I saw him at the Bottleneck.
Oh, cool. Love that venue.
And he was the opener for John 5. So what started all this tangent, I was able to talk to him for a minute at the merch stand.
There you go. Great opportunity.
So I didn't ask him anything about the podcast at the time. And actually, I take that back. The first time I saw him, we hadn't even started the podcast yet. But when he was coming back through, I'm like, I remember talking to him. I got a feel for a little bit at least for his personality and how he can talk to people just on the regular. And if he says yes, this would be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So shot that out there, and that goes back to, like I said, the original point of just going to the shows, being in local places, checking new bands out.
Yep.
I had no idea who Jared Nichols was before that show. But I paid the money for the ticket, so I go out there, and I'm going to see the opener and see, hey, what can you do?
ChemTrails with Adam and Sean, I believe, posted on Facebook last night from Starlight for the Head and the Heart and maybe the Revivalists. Was that you or was that Sean? Or
that was me.
Okay, you saw the Head and the Heart last night.
Yes, sir, and the Revivalist.
Okay,
I wasn't very familiar with the Head and the Heart beforehand. I'd heard a couple songs. They were really good live.
Nice.
They really were. Good composition. Strong musicians too.
Absolutely.
Very, very, very strong.
I dig them. I forget her name, Charity Rose. Is she still female vocal, like violin / fiddle?
I don't know the band members' names. I'm going to assume yes, because there was a lady that was doing violin and some vocals and all that.
She's got pipes.
Yeah. And honestly, I thought all of them had pretty good voices, because there's I don't know the band members' names, but there was a male that was doing a lot of vocals as well. He had a T-shirt on that said Isles. I don't know if that helps you any.
No, it's they had I can't, beyond her name, the rest are escaping me too. But a few years back, they had a different front male vocalist that was with them but then they parted ways, and an existing member that kind of did some vocal stuff just sort of stepped into that role, which seemed convenient. I don't know.
And that would also explain why he was playing instruments as well. Like, he wasn't just doing vocals.
Right.
And that was nice. Something I didn't know about the Revivalist, their lead singer plays guitar too.
Okay.
I wasn't completely aware of that.
I'm not familiar with them, but so Head and the Heart opened for Revivalists?
It was 3 bands. It was Jamie Wyatt was the opener, Head and the Heart was second, Revivalist were the headliner.
And how'd you get turned on to the Revivalists?
The Men Amongst Mountains album, I think, is incredible, and it's about 5 or 6 years old now.
That's one of theirs?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Right on.
And there's 2 or 3 songs to it. People that know the band gravitate towards the song "Wish I Knew You."
Okay.
And if you go YouTube them, that's going to be one of your first pop things
Sure.
that pops up, where they've done it in studio in different different formats, and really, really, really strong song.
Men Amongst Mountains.
Men Amongst Mountains. The album itself is, I think, stellar. It's a good example of kind of what I kind of look at a newer, almost soul revival.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's a real soulful voice there.
Nice.
And they're not going for an over the top or more straightforward, quote unquote, rock and roll.
Okay.
It leans itself more towards a soul feel to
Sure.
it. And they kind of fit in with like St. Paul and the Broken Bones and Duran Jones and the Black Pumas. There's a small group of folks that have a pretty strong soul sound.
Nice.
The Revivalists not as much, but a couple of those bands.
Black Pumas are phenomenal. I love those guys.
And when you listen to some of those bands, like Duran Jones in particular, the Pumas have a lot of influence in this area too. You can hear a lot of Otis Redding and Al Green influence, and Sam Cooke and things like that. I never thought I'd hear a good soul wave come back.
Like that, the 70s one was it. And
Yeah, I thought Motown may have been the one and only.
right, yeah, exactly.
But you've got some strong voices out there. Oh, I forgot to mention Anderson East, another one, has a lot of Al Green flavor to him, to his vocals and the way he styles his music. Another one, too, similar to the Revivalist, came off really good live. You hear the horn section more live. You can get a better feel for their voice, and I should have written this down, but the Revivalist lead singer, he has an incredible voice, and it's really strong live, too. Same with Anderson East. The Pumas are phenomenal.
Yeah. So, how often are you seeing shows? Monthly, weekly?
Kind of depends on the calendar.
Sure.
When things get hectic, I mean, obviously I slow down a little bit, but there's also times where it's the opposite, where maybe I've got some free time, or if I see a line of shows coming up, I'll schedule things around and hit several shows in a row. Like right now, last night I saw the Revivalist and Head and Heart. 2 weeks ago, it was Black Angels and Rival Sons. Boy, Rival Sons. You want to talk about another great voice? Jay Buchanan, their lead singer, has got one of the strongest set of pipes I've ever seen.
Nice.
Really strong, and they're definitely rock and roll.
Cool.
It's almost shtick at this point. Every concert clip I've seen on YouTube, and every time I've seen them in person, 2 or 3 songs in, they'll kind of break it down for a second, and Buchanan will hit the mic and go, "We are the Rival Sons, and do you know what we do? We play rock and roll music." And then they'll kick back in. And it was something of that nature, and it's consistent. That is their entire mode, and I love it.
Well, I'm really glad that you said what you said at the top about being that guy. And I didn't set out to do this with musicians per se. Mm-hmm. Just like all people are, if you're somebody that is willing and interested to come just bullshit and talk music, you're a good candidate. Hopefully you're not a dick, right?
In theory.
Right. But I did have a few musicians just kind of randomly, but only once Sean and I connected did I start getting a few follows from bands.
Right.
So I've reached out to those folks, but musicians, people that I know, people that I've never met, I have had to learn, once, twice, and
then you kind of take your hands off,
and that also sort of has gone hand in hand with when I'm socializing. I try not to bring it up at all anymore, because I feel like when I was getting it ready and then it was off the ground, it was like I could just fucking hear myself talking about it wherever I was, and it made me grossed out by myself. So I try now to if somebody brings it, okay, but
it's a fine line, and I can tell you, I have a container in my car. If it comes up naturally in conversation, I can go get you a couple stickers of bands I've seen or we've had on there and for the podcast. but I don't try and push them. The only thing I will do is if I'm in a record store and I have the opportunity, I might ask them if I can leave something so that customers can pick something up and go, here's a link tree. And then they can go check out the counterclockwise channel and hear us there.
I've thought about doing that about 40 times, but haven't done it yet.
It's a surprisingly cheap form of advertisement because
right.
At least I'm going to assume you're the same way. I know I am. I always look at that stand by the door in a record store to see what are the free local magazines, are there any cards, is there a flyer for a local show coming up?
Since I've been old enough to drive, I've been doing that,
So, and then that to
grab
me,
the pitch, stickers, this is
right, yeah.
This band looks cool, whatever it is.
Oh, the Emporium, they're playing these guys, whatever.
Yep.
So, and I just assume that's a natural thing for anyone walking into a record store. So that's something that we've done all along.
Right.
Is basically made glorified business cards that had logo and link tree on the back.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
So easy to see, easy for someone to put in their pocket and keep with them.
So what is the ChemTrails? Adam and Sean, Tuesdays 7 and 10 Central. Counterclockwise KC radio. Which is you can find it via Live 365 or the TuneIn app, correct?
Correct, yes.
So what is the origin story of the name of the show?
I knew you were going to ask me that. So I asked Sean.
Oh, okay.
Because the way the podcast
God, I hope I didn't ask him and forgot that I asked him.
You didn't.
Okay, cool.
Because we talked about it for a second just to make sure. But the origin of the podcast is Sean had wanted to do something of this nature. He had the idea as far as talking about records and then talk about the local stuff going on. And it was just kind of brainstorming with people he knew that might fit that. So he invited me.
Okay.
That's how I get involved. But he already had the name, so I didn't actually know the origin until I asked him because I thought you might ask me.
Good, and good on you. That was clever.
No, apparently he was looking at an old German airline ad from the 70s, and it had what he thought were lines of cocaine in the chemtrails from the airplane.
Huh.
So he saw that, chemtrails clicked, and then he thought of the Joe Walsh album where he's got that biplane and you got the logo, the name of the album written into the trails behind it.
Is it a Joe Walsh or is it a James Gang record?
It's Joe Walsh.
Okay,
Definitely. But that's just kind of the origin of it, and the more he thought, it felt right to him.
Nice.
So, yeah, cocaine, whatever.
Now, chemtrails are like leftover jet stream that is a result of attempts at weather manipulation. Is that?
That's the long story to it, and the term itself is a lot of times associated with conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Which is, I get questions about that.
Sure.
One.
I asked.
What do you guys talk about?
I had an electrician. I needed like 2 things done, and then it was 5, and then it was 7, and by the time it was 10, I was like, God damn it! So I had this company came over. Walked him around to the things, and he gave me like 3 quote options. Here's one you can do like 5 things. Here's one you can do all of them. So I chose somewhere near all of them, because it was after 10 years. Like I inherited the home with some of those things and saw them at like blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, God, I don't want to have, electrician projects taking up any more mental bandwidth. So let's just hammer some out. And the guy was very sweet, very nice, did a good job. But I think that's how he spends all of his waking time, is dialed into podcasts about conspiracy theories and like researching and YouTube. Mm-hmm. Like he had more to say. Like he sent me a Christmas card, It's upstairs, and it was like, you should break some shit so I can come back. And I was like, oh my god, dude.
Did he hand deliver it, or does he actually trust the post office?
No. He put it in an envelope with a stamp on it.
Okay.
But that was I was talking to this girl at the time, and after he left, I was kind of filling her in on the whole day with him, and she's like, because I'd never heard the term before. She's like,
Yeah.
What do you mean you've never heard of chemtrails before?
Yeah.
I was like, I've never ever in 48 years heard. But now.
It's been a while, but there was, especially in that first year, we would get random messages about people that had ideas that they thought we should talk about, and they were conspiracy theories.
Okay.
So I get, and like a lot of the social media stuff is set up in my name, so I'd be like at work and randomly get a Facebook Messenger message from some dude talking about Iraqis, and
Man.
just bizarre stuff out
Wrong
there.
number, buddy.
Right. How about you give it a listen and then come back to me with a solid album? If you have a theory about a musician, maybe.
Right. So, are you born and raised in the area?
Grew up in Lee Summit.
Okay, right on.
Lee Summit, yeah. I spent 25 plus years living right off 2nd and Green Street in downtown Lee Summit.
Okay, nice.
It's anymore, because I'm 40 now. So I go, when I'm in town, because I still have a lot of friends and family that live in Lee Summit.
Sure.
So when I go through there, though, it looks so different.
Right.
If you'd have told me when I was in high school that Lee Summit would have a legitimate bar district in downtown, I'd have said, you're crazy. They'll never let that fly. Turns out I would have been wrong.
Right.
There's a solid dozen bars in about a 3-block radius in downtown Lee Summit.
Nice.
There's a bunch. There's options.
Yeah. I think I brought it up with Nigel, but I mean, I moved back to KC in 2000 and was dating a girl whose folks lived in Lee Summit, and the Dewdrop Inn was the only place we ever went for a drink while we were out there, and apparently it's gone. It's something else now.
But that's only a couple years gone.
But I haven't been out for beers anywhere else really in downtown Lee Summit.
Man, oh man, I've had a few drinks in that place. The owner's daughter's a crazy one.
Nice.
I think Nigel also mentioned like Fringe. I think you mentioned Fringe Beer Works, and that's in downtown Lee Summit.
Okay, cool. Well, I know Smoke. I mean, that's...
Smoke is in Lee Summit too.
Yeah.
There's several there. I don't know if he mentioned it because I actually didn't listen to your episode with Sean. Shame on me, I guess. Sean works at one too.
Oh, that's right. The Goat.
It's not in downtown, but it's in Lee Summit. Goat Brewery, and they do some good stuff too.
We were talking Tuesday evening, and he said that there's maybe a thing on the 9th at the Goat to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Counterclockwise KC.
That might be nice. I see he hadn't mentioned that to me yet, but also I've had some personal things going on where I've been out of touch for a couple of weeks, and was going to get back in touch with him to record the next episode.
Yeah,
probably this coming week, or maybe the week after.
When we were talking Tuesday evening, I think it just hours ago had kind of come up, or recently. So
it's certainly possible. Things move pretty quickly around Sean, it seems.
Right.
He's got his fingers in a lot of stuff, and he's always moving and messing with things, and
it's a good thing.
Got something coming up.
Yeah. So what about your folks? How did they meet?
I could not tell you.
Okay.
The old man left when I was 5, has never said a word since.
Are you serious?
I don't know anyone on Dad's side.
At all?
At all. None of them.
Do you have siblings?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Lots of them, apparently.
That grew up in the same home as you, or was it just...
Okay, no, all right. So, I'm going to give you 2 answers to the siblings question.
Okay.
My brother and my sister, I have brother and sister. My brother's a different dad, same mom, obviously, so he's always been there. My sister's the same dad. So when he left all of us.
Okay.
The reason I make the funny comment, though, is at one point, I'm guessing he always had some line of work where he couldn't get taxed or garnished. We never got anything.
Bummer.
One time they got a hold of him, and they tried to make him pay insurance for the kids. So my mom called the insurance company up. said, hey, I'm the separated wife of
Sure.
Kenny Cobb. And I was given this number to talk to you about insurance. And the lady goes, are you the mother of, and listed like 5 other names.
Damn.
One of which, my age.
Huh.
And he left when I was 5.
Damn.
He'd been running around on Mom for a minute.
Okay. So you don't
So I've probably got a bunch of siblings I don't know.
Right.
And extended family like aunts, uncles, and all that. I don't know anyone on that side.
Okay.
Browning is my mother's name.
Okay.
I legally had it changed
Nice.
because I've never known.
Yeah.
I've never known the Cobbs.
Do you even know if he's still alive?
I don't.
No idea. Wow.
Yeah. So I've never identified or really been a part of that family, so it made sense. And
Sure. Did your sister also?
No. And here's why. I am my sister's guardian because she's mentally handicapped.
Okay.
And I didn't go through the process because it would have been my decision. I didn't go through the process because the name thing wouldn't make a difference or really mean anything to her mentally.
Understood. Gotcha. Okay.
So, and as far as she's concerned, I'm her brother.
Right.
Brandon's her brother.
Right.
Mom's in heaven. And that's...
How long's Mom been gone?
11 years.
Okay.
11 years. So...
So
that's how I became my sister's guardian.
She stays with you.
When my mom passed, I took guardianship.
Okay.
And have gone through the process to get a little bit of state help and to help fund for. She lives in a house with a couple other roommates that are also in similar situations, where they have someone in there that can help them.
Okay.
Because she can talk and she can do a lot of functioning things. She needs guidance more than anything.
Okay.
So. In that respect, she's doing well and all that.
Good.
Family,
Good for you.
Family wise, though, yeah, Mom's not here. I've never known Dad. It's a pretty small group right now.
Okay.
Family wise,
Yeah.
just because it's
sure. Splintered again, sort of in a sense.
Yeah. So I've got one aunt and uncle by the Brownings, and I talk to them a little bit, but I'm not close with the uncle and my aunt. Relatively close. Grandpa recently passed. Grandma had passed before Mom. So right now my family is very, very small.
Dang. Okay.
Very small.
Well, did Mom put on music in the home when you guys were little?
Mom always liked music. My understanding is actually Mom could play a little bit of guitar.
Okay.
When she passed, I actually took her guitar.
Okay.
Had it refinished and gave it to my brother.
Nice.
Because...
You're a thoughtful fella, man.
Well, yeah, and there's an extra thought that went into that. I told you, I play guitar.
Right.
My first guitar was bought from Mom.
Nice.
So I have a guitar from Mom.
Hey.
So I finished
Fair is
hers
fair.
and gave it to my brother.
Cool.
We both have a guitar from Mom.
I love it.
In some ways. So, that was just, I thought that was a good thing and a neat thing to do. And
I concur 1,000%. I love that.
Yeah, I had it finished up, bought a hard case for it and all that. But yeah, so she played at one point. I don't recall her playing in my memory. I don't think she'd played in a long time as I was growing up. But there was always music, at least of some sort.
Sure.
And Mom had, especially considering the time she grew up, she had I'm going to call it a liberal attitude.
Okay.
She would listen to things and you could present things to her, and she'd have an open mind. Thankfully,
right,
one of the albums we're going to talk about stems from this.
Okay.
Because my brother, there's 6.5 years between me and my brother.
Okay.
And he's obviously he's the older. I'm the baby of the three. But so he's getting into things long before I am. By the time I hit 10, 11, he's 16, 17.
Sure.
I had an enormous catalog to dig through because of my brother.
Awesome.
He literally had 600 CDs.
And open door policy. Come on in, check something out.
Yeah.
Borrow it, put it back whenever you're done. Don't fuck it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
The $50, $60 CD imports.
Different
you
story.
listen to those when he's around.
Right.
Like was it a Stevie Ray Vaughan's Live in Tokyo. He paid a pretty penny for that. Man, it sounded good. But Mom's attitude allowed him to expand and explore.
Okay.
Almost every album I mentioned to you that we're going to talk about is because of my brother.
Nice. I've been looking for this story. I'm 3 younger sisters. I've had a couple folks that have had older, where they've admitted, yeah, my older brother, blah, but for the most part, no.
Yeah.
And I thought the opposite, that most people would be like, I am who I am because my older brother, blah, 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 but cool. You're here finally.
Yeah, and what's funny is like when you reached out to me and we agreed on this and I sent you the list of records, I told my brother, I said, I'm going to be on Badass Records, and part of the deal is you pick the five records that you consider, and part of my choices were based on the way you phrased your question and invitation, because you said 5 records that are great or life-changing. So I went for 5 that I knew how I got to them and how they changed my music.
You were thoughtful.
Perception.
I love it.
And they all come from my brother.
Cool.
Like one of the, well, actually, I'll explain it when we get there, but so each one of these has some form of tie into my brother. And again, that goes back to Mom having an open door policy and being able to listen and hear an explanation. Because her knee-jerk reaction was that Black Sabbath was satanic.
That was a thing that we were told back, in the 80s. Or not necessarily. It was a thing that was said in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And biting heads off doves and...
But yet Ozzy himself did not do anything to help eliminate that idea, okay?
I know.
He kind of leaned into it, actually. But my brother found out where the name came from and was able to explain that to her so it wasn't disallowed. Mom would listen.
That's cool, man.
She may not have liked the music, but she always had, let it go.
Man,
and I think it's also partially from one of my favorite stories of my mother as a child. From her growing up too, because she listened to music. She would listen to Led Zeppelin and all these rock and roll bands that were going on when she was growing up, and she always gave Grandma credit because one of the albums she listened to was Alice Cooper's Constrictor.
Okay,
and it came with a poster.
Oh boy,
which had Alice Cooper with a snake wrapped around it. Grandma hated snakes.
Long hair and probably some eye black.
Hated it. I heard this story, I can't tell you how many times, because Mom had that poster on her door, and Grandma never made her take it down.
On the front of the door or inside her room?
Yeah, inside her room. Okay. Inside her room. But
at least you don't have to see it walking past.
Right. But still, it was one of those things that Mom knew it, and as she grew up, recognized that Grandma allowed it to happen because it wasn't actually a bad thing, and your kid's going to grow, either accept it and learn about it or grow out of it.
Sounds like Mom and Grandma were thoughtful people too.
So I think that's the origin of Mom's more very open policy with it, especially music, and it's something that could potentially come off as shock. Your shock rock, things like that.
Yeah.
So Mom would listen to things like that. It allowed Brandon to explore and build this massive, diverse music collection that I would ultimately explore.
Right. So he's still around and you guys are still
absolutely
close?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Man,
I was his best man a couple years ago.
Nice. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but shitty of your old man to do that, but it sounds like kudos to Mom, because those that remained stayed close.
Yeah, very, very close.
Cool. I love it, man. So before we get to your list, was there a first album that you fell in love with or acquired at a young age?
Album-wise, really, the first time I'm really falling in love with an album is going to be in your early 90s, and that kind of gets right into where we're at with the list I made.
Okay.
There are musicians that I remember and still have good memories of from Mom growing up. My brother and I joke about this because we're both quasi-nerds about music, and we've got a family plan on Spotify, and we name our playlist. And he's got one that it's called Wilson Street, And it's all the stuff Mom listened to when we were growing up on Wilson Street.
Oh man, heartstrings tug right there.
So, but it's also good memories, and just clearly recall Mom playing the shit out of James Taylor's greatest hits.
Oh,
and,
funny, nice.
Yeah, listen to the Carpenters and George Strait and all. She liked Tony Braxton a lot.
Okay. So how about either first show for you or first memorable show when you were young?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. My brother took me to my first concert.
What was it?
Rush.
Nice. What tour?
Test for Echo. Would be 96-ish.
Okay. So
roughly.
One or two records after Roll the Bones.
You got Roll the Bones. Two. Because it's Roll the Bones, then Counterparts, then Test for Echo.
Okay.
The cool thing about this, and we did not know this at the time, well, kind of. Historically speaking, now that we can look back, we know this. That is the only tour where they consistently played the overture in its entirety.
Oh, really?
They'd played it in one-offs, or they would play parts of it,
sure,
but not the entire overture. That's the only one.
Okay.
And it's my first concert.
Where was it?
So I got to see the entire overture, and it's Rush. They did 2 sets. I don't think there was an opener that night.
Probably not.
Yeah, because they did 2 sets, and they finished the first set with the overture, and then came back for the second set.
Where'd you see him?
I don't know what it's called now. Sandstone.
Sandstone. Yeah, it's always Sandstone.
Right. Yeah, so that was the first show, and again, another example, just being tight family-wise. My brother's 6.5 years older than I am. Might have been about 14, 15.
Yeah.
So he's 20, 21.
It's cool he took you.
He took me with a bunch of his friends. He didn't have to bring the little brother along for that. But he okayed it through Mom, and his friends were fine with it. And he's like, Adam, let's go see Rush.
Nice.
I was like, yeah, let's do that.
Were you into Rush by then?
Yeah.
Okay.
and 2112 is what started me with Rush. So
sure.
being able to have that opportunity to go see the overture and get a concert in, and boy, I came out of the gates pretty strong, because that's number one. Number 2 is my uncle took me to B.B. King at Starlight.
Oh, wow.
And it was B.B. King, John Hyatt, and Tommy Castro.
Okay.
Strong list, strong show.
Yeah.
King still had his voice. I still have the poster I bought from that show.
Nice.
But, yeah, those were the first 2 concerts. I hit good classic / progressive rock, and then the King of the Blues.
Fantastic.
That's how we got started.
Well, so we talked a little bit about ChemTrails with Adam and Sean right when we got rolling. Tuesdays, 7 and 10 Central, Counterclockwise KC Radio. Adam Browning, appreciate you being here. I know
Thank you.
We all have things pulling us in a bunch of different directions. So,
yeah,
man, when there is a person seated in the chair, and we've, I whatever version of that guy I was started off, it always feels good because I didn't rub you the wrong way. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here,
right?
And so we talk about what is this, the pot? Okay, well, yeah, let me check it out. I'll get back, and then maybe you get to the list, and then maybe the dates, and then the date arrives, and it's like,
well,
it's a big old thing to make it happen.
And obviously, I have to take your word on that one. At least in my instance, though, for you, the beauty of it was Sean had already done the show.
Right.
So I'm like, I sent a message out. I'm like, Blair Johnson, is that the same dude I'm thinking of? Is that Badass Records? And he's like, yes. I was like, all right. He reached out to me. He goes, oh, yeah, go for that. Assuming you got time, easy conversation, and just talking about music. And that's how I got into ChemTrails, because when Sean made the offer, I said, look, you're telling me you would like me to sit down and talk music for about an hour and a half every 2 weeks? I'm already doing that.
Just not with gear in front of me.
Yeah. I just all you're doing is putting a microphone in front of me. And Sean and I had a history, because we've been friends for a while, numerous times at the bar talking about music.
Nice.
So he knew I was diverse and had basically wasn't, pardon my language, wasn't talking out my ass.
Yeah.
If I start rolling through a story, you can 95% of the time fact check it and be right. Because I generally am on top of it, and I'm generally not going to throw something wild out there without a clause if I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Good thing. Good practice to have. But we should dive into your list, and more often than not, I'll just roll with what you gave me in chronological order of release date. So if we can do that, then Volume 4 kicks us off.
Black
Sabbath.
That would be the earliest release, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and I mentioned this. The way you phrased the invitation in question, life-changing, great albums. I think the album is absolutely fantastic. I'm not even sure I would call it Sabbath's best album, though.
Okay.
Because I think Paranoid's great.
Absolutely.
Top to bottom.
Yep.
Absolutely great. Master of Reality, I don't think gets enough credit. I think Sabbath Bloody Sabbath is a little underrated. This one's obviously in the mix for me. It's great. This is the album that got me into Black Sabbath, though.
Okay.
And I can tell you,
what you were wearing.
Not quite.
Right, no, I know. I'm teasing.
But I mentioned Wilson Street. We had taken that garage and turned it into a room, and that's where Brandon was living at the time. And I was out there. We were playing Madden on the PlayStation.
Nice.
So we're waiting on the stupid PlayStation to load. And he said, let's put some music on. And I don't know why, but I can feel this moment in my memory. Hearing that opening riff. When Iommi lays into that first riff on Wheels of Confusion,
Yep.
I was sold immediately.
Nice.
Ozzy hadn't even said one word, and I was sold. I'm like, that is great. That's what I want to hear. That's awesome stuff. And that's what got the Sabbath started. Sabbath, yeah, I can reasonably say they're the first band I really dug into. With the name, I wanted to know how Brandon got it across Mom.
Right.
Right.
Right. Do me a favor and put that guy on the corner of the table. It just starts to come through.
I got you. Okay.
Anyway.
And actually, I don't need it at the moment because I just needed it to reference the origin of our podcast.
So he gets clearance from Mom on Sabbath.
Yeah, so that's what makes me ask about that. How'd you get that past Mom? So he explains to me that it's, Karloff movies and whatever that formed that, and also tells me the story about how one of the first things they did as a band was make cross necklaces. So there's a lot of things there. The name is face value of the name isn't accurate, but musically, and even to this day, several decades later after I heard this riff, I still think Iommi is one of the best riff writers ever.
I mean,
I'm not going to call him the absolute greatest, but he's in the conversation.
he wrote a heck of a collection of riffs on Paranoid. I can tell you that much.
Oh, there's a ton of them. They're all over the place. And if you listen to other musicians too, musically and in interviews, you can hear the influence Iommi had. You can hear how they speak of him in near reverence from what he's able to do with the guitar.
Well, not only that, I mean, this is record 4 of 18 for them, and he took over production duties for this one, right?
Yeah, for the majority of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A little collab with the other bandmates, perhaps.
There was it's mostly Iommi because the first 3 records. God, what was his name? There's the producer for the first 3 records came from the label, and this is the first record where they didn't have someone specifically. It was Iommi and one guy that was helping, but he really wasn't doing much.
Okay.
And it's just interesting times too, because this is 72, if I'm not mistaken. In that time period in music, especially when you didn't have this, what we have now with streaming and the ability to mass broadcast so easily, bands were humping it. This is album number 4 in 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because the first 2 records are released in the same year. It's like February and November or whatever, but they're both 70.
Okay.
Record number 3 is in 71.
Yeah.
And then this is 72.
That was the golden age of records, man. It was
yeah,
people were humping it. People were putting out. That was where most of our double. If there's 50 kind of notorious double albums, most of them came right there in the 70s.
Yeah, a lot of them in that early 70s.
Some 60s.
A little bit into the mid 70s too.
Yeah.
Because I want to say Physical Graffiti's mid.
And there's 76.
There's a good one.
That's
good double vinyl.
Yeah.
So with this record, they're humping it and they're busting it. They've been touring in studio and writing and drugs. The stories about the drug use for this recording session are legendary.
Yeah. A magazine called Moho in 2013 wrote, if booze and dope had helped fuel Sabbath's earlier albums, Volume 4 is their cocaine. And it's just...
Well, and that's a great way to put it, too, because the album was supposed to be named Snowblind,
and
a song written about cocaine,
right.
And the record label said, no, we don't. That is too clearly and obviously about cocaine.
Right.
We are not calling the album Snowblind.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, and that's how the end. That was a last second thing they pulled on them because it was supposed to be Snowblind.
Right.
That's why it's called Volume 4. They were done. They had everything else done. They're like, we're not messing with this anymore. It's just Volume 4.
You can't swing a dead cat around their wiki without hitting a cocaine reference. I mean, it's just all there's. One of the first lines I saw was, we're partying. Here we've written 3 records. Blah blah blah. We're pretty awesome. But at some point, you got to wonder where all the coke's coming from.
They supposedly were finding every way possible to get cocaine into the studio. Like one story I've seen, and I've seen it a couple times, is that they had speakers shipped in that were hollowed out with cocaine in them.
I mean,
like every way you could think of.
I saw one thing
that
said that all of their stuff was a bulk of the stuff around this time was like super super pure and good and blah blah blah. So
right. Bill Ward talks about, I think it's Cornucopia. He basically
great tune.
He was so absolutely out of his gourd after they finished recording it. He thought he was going to get fired. He thought he was so high that he didn't play well enough.
Right.
From the mostly cocaine.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I think they even knew it because after this record is the first time they take more than a year to make a record. Because the next one's like 74, I think.
Well, somebody there was the dude thinking he was going to get fired. There was a story about somebody walking off a stage after a performance and collapsing.
That's Iommi.
Okay. Literally every time I turn, there's like here's another cocaine story and here's another party story, and it's just like, guys,
like 24/7, 365.
Pump the brakes a little, like otherwise you're gonna be dead.
So if you think about that, but let's just go ahead and go back a year. Let's say 69. When they're making that first record, to when they're making this 72. That's 4 years of non-stop music, show, studio, drugs everywhere, mixing a nap. Right. Music, drugs.
Yeah. No one's logging quality 8 hours of sleep every night. I can guarantee you that.
They might not have been getting 8 hours a week with some of the stuff they were doing.
Right.
Because, yeah, I'd seen the same thing, too, that supposedly the quality of what they were getting right then was just out of this world.
So you this is not your first Sabbath record, you said, correct?
I don't know if I would call it my favorite.
Okay.
It's the first one I dug into because that opening riff, and like I said, I can still see the PlayStation logo in my mind as my brother's stereo is to my right. It starts playing, and I was just like looking at the stereo as if I was going to figure something out.
Right.
Looking at the stereo.
What is this? But there's a coaster there for you if you wouldn't mind throwing your.
Oh yeah.
So this one's got 10 tracks, 42 minutes long, 4th of 18, as I mentioned. So what is your favorite? If this was your first, what's your favorite?
Boy, that's a tough question. boy, and Sabbath fans are going to hate me for throwing this clause in there. If it weren't for Iron Man, Paranoid would be my favorite.
Okay. All right.
I don't like the studio version of Iron Man. The live version comes off better because you don't have any electronic voice mechanisms on the live version.
Oh, I could see where you might.
So it sounds a little too hokey with the Iron Man vocal part. Musically, I love the song, but it's just on the studio, on the album, it's the one thing that holds me back on Paranoid. My one clause with the self-titled is it flows great. The way they broke the songs up, it's hard for me to go to specific parts of a song I like.
Okay.
Because like NIB, While Asleep, and something else are one track.
I see.
So you can't kind of bounce between those two or three and go to the one or two that really stand out if you want to make a mixtape from back in the day or a playlist or
Absolutely.
whatever. If I've got to pick one, it's going to be For or Sabotage.
Okay.
I think Sabotage is absolutely brilliant, and it's a good mix, good flow album-wise in your dynamics. But it's also, the songs aren't too long, but they're also not too short. This one, I love the dynamics on this, but I'm not always in the mood for an FX.
Okay. That's quick, though. It's like $1.14 or something.
Or a cornucopia. Changes is one of the few times they used a piano. It's a great written song, not always necessarily what I'm thinking about, though.
Right.
So, Volume 4, I love it as an album. It's the one that gets me into them. But it's not necessarily the first one I put on if I'm going to go put on a Sabbath album now.
Okay. Fair enough. So we'll skip 12 years ahead. And this one caught me off guard.
This is the entire reason I asked you if I had to own it in physical.
Oh, great question.
Because that's one of Sean and I's stipulations is that if we talk about a record on the podcast, we have to physically have it.
Okay.
That way we're just not pulling anything out of the sun.
Sure.
Granted, we both have massive record collections, so we have a lot of options. But that's one of our stipulations, so that's why I made sure to ask. I've never once owned a copy of Bob Marley's Legend.
Are you serious?
Never.
Wow.
My brother had it.
Okay. Oh, fair enough.
So I listened to it, and I think it's so interesting. It's a great starting point. If you look at the songs, I had read this. Well, I've read it. I'd already put it together when I read it. They kind of steered away from some of his more political songs. Mm-hmm. Some of the more revolutionary songs, you might say. And I always thought that was interesting. And
I'm not sure why that's doing that, but it sounds like I'm going to have the electrician back out. Sorry, but real quick, 84, Bob Marley and the Wailers Legend, 14 tracks, 51 minutes. They for sure steered away from political. Every one of those has got, heavy emotion tied to it. Most of them happy, one or two mournful kind of, but yes.
Yeah, very much so. Because there's only Buffalo Soldier has a little bit of political aspect to it. Stir It Up a little bit, not much, but a little bit. I Shot the Sheriff. You basically couldn't do a Bob Marley Greatest Hits without that, no matter what theme you're going for.
Right.
At this point in his life and career. And I've never. I don't think like other people. And I've never viewed Marley the same as everyone else, I don't think. Because even listening to this and using this as my launch point, Jammin' was never my favorite song on there. Never.
Well, yeah, there's not a whole lot to it.
But it's one of those, Jammin' and I Shot the Sheriff are the two big ones that get the most attention from Marley.
Oh, really?
I
think every track on there does. I mean, half of them have been used in movies and TV shows, and I just feel like they're all very familiar. But I mean, I listen to that record 1,000 times over before finally I was like, I don't want to hear this anymore. And I went and I got the whole discography on cassette, and that's where I really did.
Right.
Had a dude on here, and he was like, "They're all the same, aren't they?" And I was like, "They are absolutely not anywhere close."
No, yeah, I don't. I'd have a hard time with someone giving me that statement as well.
I did too.
But it seems to me like anytime I bring up Marley, almost always the first song that's mentioned is jamming.
Really?
And I've never understood that. Like, it's a good song, but I never quite understood that. Because when I listened to this, the first one that jumped out to me was "Is This Love?"
Okay.
And so I did. Another thing I like about this album, there's several things. It's a good launching point, and it did. I dug in. My favorite style of Marley song is when he is more simplified love songs, because he writes great songs all the way through.
Sure.
But those are the songs I love the most. I mean, I put on "Catch a Fire" yesterday.
Nice.
And the first song I go to is "Baby, We Got a Date."
Interesting.
It's and after that I skip back to "High Tide, Low Tide."
Okay.
So I just for my personal taste, I really like the simplified love songs. The ones that are a little more spiritual really stand out to me.
Nice.
And that's I think that's part of the reason why I liked "Redemption Song" on Legend, because it has a very spiritual connection.
Absolutely.
And like I said, "Is This Love" is the first one that I really gravitated to. I was like, this song is awesome. And it's very, the lyrics aren't complex. That is a straightforward love song. He does it well.
Right.
But yeah, it starts you down the Marley path, and there's so much to learn about him.
There is. I feel like I still have only scratched the surface, and I was a fan I was in that lane for a while.
Right.
Always would have branched out and found some other artists that, but there was never anyone that was like him.
No, there really isn't. I mean, for crying out loud, the man was shot and played a concert 3 days later.
Right.
That says a lot about dedication to music. It also says a lot about his beliefs. Because, that concert was supposed to... The idea was to unite people.
Nice.
So, and the doctors told him, they said, if we pull this bullet out, you might not play again. He said, leave it. Goes out and plays a show in the name of unity 3 days later.
Crazy.
Absolutely insane. There's so much to like and so much interesting history about Marley. That incident, there's a Netflix documentary called "I Shot the Sheriff."
Okay.
Very, very interesting. And similar to you, because I saw that a couple years ago. I already knew about that incident. I had some good knowledge, but I found some stuff out watching that I didn't know.
Interesting.
There's still a lot there. There were a lot of moving parts and pieces that were involved in that incident.
Interesting. Man, I just, it's funny how, I mean, the discography, there was some serious intention album art wise, like just the font and the way things were lettered, and like there is sort of a unifying theme visually to his collection of studio records, but there's to me there's like almost each one has its own unique set of emotions or single emotion.
There really is. One of the things that I absolutely or will get me into an artist or make me promote per se an artist, just tell everyone about him,
right,
is if you can do that little bit of extra nuance, whether it's the story behind the song, a concept to an album, the art to an album, like you were just talking about, because there's a definite feel of art when you look at a Marley album.
Yeah,
very much so. "Catch a Fire" is an interesting one too, because if I'm not mistaken, it's his first international release.
Okay.
And when they first released it, you probably know this part, it was designed like a Zippo.
I didn't.
The record itself was designed like a Zippo.
Okay.
to where you have your 12 by 12 record cover, but they put a rivet in the side of it so that the top half opens like a Zippo.
Nice.
Inside the Zippo, you see the little flame.
Sure.
The record's inside the flame.
Cool.
So instead of doing the side pull out, you had to open the top.
I like it.
Pull the record out of the flame.
And it didn't fly.
They kept breaking on the rivet, so they changed the album cover.
And
so
he's got is there flames and he's got a spliff? Is that what it wound up being?
Yeah. You're thinking right on that, because the one is he's smoking because he'd catch a fire.
Yeah.
But the original artwork, it looked like a Zippo.
Cool.
So that's not to brag, I have one.
Oh, cool. Very well. I'm glad you said that because
I'm a collector and I love music. So when I can find something that hits both of my
wheelhouses.
Weaknesses.
Wheelhouse,
yeah.
I'm glad you said that's really cool. You have one, but man, I have very, very little vinyl. I still have hundreds and hundreds of cassettes and hundreds of CDs. But if we're going to talk about a record on the podcast, we have to have it. I mean, shit is not cheap.
They really are. With the records coming back, there's the prices have come back with them.
I'm gonna this flickering light is driving me crazy, and I think it's the air conditioner.
Okay,
so I'm gonna run upstairs real quick.
Might be soon.
Yeah, but sorry about that. So with records coming back, we were talking about them.
Yeah, they're coming back, and the prices are coming back with them.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, they're not cheap. I already had a decent collection when this resurgence started, and I still do because I like the sound. And again, one of the things I always loved about records, because I've always had a little bit of a record collection, and it's grown because it's taken time. So it's grown over time. Yeah. I don't have the cassette collection like you mentioned, because when I started listening to music, it's right in that gray period where cassettes are kind of fading out to CDs.
Yeah.
So I never really got.
I held out until like 2000.
Oh wow!
Because I was like, what am I supposed to? I don't want to rebuy all these, Which some I did, most I did not.
Right. So I've got records and CDs, just because there's a long time where it's obviously not convenient to travel with a record.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for a long time I was the oddball. Right. No one else had a record player.
Right.
I did. So yeah, I've got a decent CD collection and a good sized record collection at this point.
Nice.
Just from following bands too, I get into discounted sales and pre-sales and things like that, where I can get something unique without having to spend quite as much money as you might otherwise.
Right.
And there's a handful that are special that I've made the point to go track down, like Catch a Fire.
Sure.
So I literally looked for that for 15 years.
I bet. Where'd you finally find it?
Record store in, I think it's technically Grandview.
Wait a minute. You were just flipping through and you're like,
No, it wasn't that glorious. No, I'd been looking for so long, and when I found this record store, it's called Got What You Like Records. It's over on Hickman Mills Drive. But I went in there and was talking to Mark, the owner, because I'd met him at a pop-up record store, and he told me about his storefront. So I went in there, because when he told me about that, it also turns out that he was surprisingly close to where I lived. So I'm
nice.
Like, oh, great. I'll go down there, support local business, look at some records, all things I like. And he said, what are you looking for? And I named him 2 or 3 records, because there was a couple blues records I was looking for at the time, and I named Catch a Fire. And maybe 2 months, 3 months later, I get a message from him. He said, I found it.
Wow.
I said, is it still intact? Because you can find them that are broken. You get the top half and the bottom half, but they ain't functioning.
Right.
And an item like that, you can find them online.
Okay.
It's not something I'm willing to purchase sight unseen, though. That's why I took the time to look for it.
I see. Okay.
Just because of the issue with that
Sure.
rivet.
Yeah, of course.
So he found it, and I went in there, and he showed me that it worked, and I was like, and the record was in good shape. And I was like, all right.
Nice.
Here's my card.
So we took a 12-year leap from Volume 4 to Legend, and then we're going to take a 14-year leap and hit VH1 Storytellers. Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, 1998.
Phenomenal recording.
15 tracks, 52 minutes. We go from legend to a pair of legends gigging together, and seemingly, based on the banter between the tracks,
Having a good time.
yeah,
It seems like.
really enjoying each other's company.
Yeah, there's a lot of good jokes, and there's got a couple funny stories about the songs. When I got a hold of this, it would be really close to the time it came out.
Okay.
And actually, I don't think I listened to it on CD first. Because as I said, all of my choices are, I know where I was.
Mm-hmm.
We were on a family vacation, and we would take week and a half vacations with Grandma and Grandpa, and try not to be too expensive, because as we talked about earlier, Mom was a single mom of 3.
Sure.
With one being handicapped.
Yeah.
So money's always tight.
Yeah.
So we would go on these vacations and rent a cabin, and we'd have to rent the conversion van to get out there, because we didn't have something big enough for everyone to
Sure.
get with
All
all the
your
clothes,
stuff.
all the stuff
Yeah.
you need, and the people. So we're in South Dakota, and Mom and Grandma are making dinner. Me, my brother, and my grandpa are flipping through the TV, and this is on.
No kidding.
So this is a family vacation where I discovered this recording, and then they put it out on CD afterwards.
Oh, wow.
So when
That's
so
cool.
when it comes out on CD, I'm like, that has a real special
guys.
meaning to me.
Right? Yeah.
This is great, and I like the music. And as far as the great albums part, and I also mentioned how each of my selections would change or influence my music taste and what I went to forwards. I was relatively familiar with Willie Nelson, his catalog, what I liked and didn't like. I was not with Johnny Cash at this point. And this recording is after the Unchained record, which is the second American recordings with Rick Rubin.
Mm.
So a couple of the songs on here, Unchained itself is on here.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought there was one more that was on. I Still Miss Someone is on. No, I'll take that. I Still Miss Someone's on the first American recordings. And even that was a re-recording, because he'd released that many, many, many years ago.
Okay.
But when I watched this show, I didn't know that.
Right.
So, watching this and listening to him and hearing the good banter back and forth made both of them very endearing.
Absolutely.
To listening to them, it just very, it's cliche term, but wholesome.
Yeah.
I felt good about myself watching this.
I mean, I didn't know that this record existed, and I love Johnny and I love Willie, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. I wonder how is there going to be a palpable phoniness, when I'm listening? Nope. It's
it sounds very authentic, very straightforward. Early on, they make the joke about how they're both, one of them's drinking a hot chocolate and the other one's drinking, water.
Mm-hmm.
And Cash is like, as long as we keep wearing black, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
So it was just all the little jokes, and it was stripped down without being too stripped down.
Right.
It's Johnny Cash before his voice wasn't as crisp as it was, obviously, when he was younger.
Right. But I don't think it got this good again after.
No, it would go down a little bit, quite a bit after this.
Mm-hmm.
Your third and fourth American recordings albums, there's a lot more faltering. There's a lot more wavering in his voice.
Is that a label, American Recordings, or are you just saying he recorded stateside?
No. It's that's Rubin's label.
Oh, okay. I saw that Rubin was the producer on this one. I didn't recall that they had worked elsewhere together.
Yeah, he did, because that's Rubin's record label. So it's Johnny Cash would later release a box set, and he called it American Recordings, and it was all the B-sides from those sessions.
Oh, fantastic.
But yeah, that's Ruben's label, and this sits in, like you said, Ruben produced it, so this is technically issued under Cash's name and label, but obviously it's Two Legends.
Mm-hmm.
It not long after this show, Cash would basically stop touring. So this is also one of the last live recordings of Cash.
Wow.
And it's in great quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, he would do a handful of things one-offs, but he didn't really tour again.
Okay. How much do you
after
know
this-
about Ruben's label? Does he have a ton of amazing artists on it, or?
Rick Rubin is all over the place, and I don't know how much is actually on his label, but as a producer, though, he's worked with
Well, yes,
almost
right.
every genre under the sun, and a lot of big names.
But if he's produced for somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean their record's coming out on his label, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And the Cash ones did.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting, and it's one of the reasons I chose this. It's a great something where I clearly recall where I was, how I found out about it, how it changed.
I love that story.
Where I would go with music, because I was only a little bit country there, and that gets me a little more further back, because Willie's going to lead you down a road with obviously the Outlaws.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you can dig in and spread out a little bit from there. Cash leads you down a little bit different road, because it's more of the classic traditional country.
Right.
You know, going all the way back. And
So did you wind up digging a little bit into Cash's solo stuff from this?
Yeah, most definitely.
And
from this also, when I saw the show, I didn't know much of anything about the stuff with Rick Rubin either.
Okay.
I would learn about that after the fact.
Nice.
So this really starts it for me with Cash.
But you knew going in, you knew Willie, but you didn't know Cash. And did you find that you enjoyed Cash?
I like Cash. There aren't a lot of individual releases that I'd really go to.
Okay.
I found my favorite Cash recordings are live ones, because there's a couple bootlegs from. I have one that's mid 70s, and I have one that's early 80s. That are both really good, and the styling of it, and he has such a large catalog. We mentioned this when we were talking about Sabbath, and the country genre is no different. And your mid 70s prior, your musicians they were just churning it out as much as they could.
Right.
So the Johnny Cash catalog is large and in charge.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot to dig through. So what I love about the couple of bootlegs I found is that they hit the songs I like the most.
Okay.
And I can do that, and Cash always styled his shows to talk with the audience and have that have that personable appearance and front. And I think that's part of that stems from having the TV show. So it would be a natural thing for him to translate that.
What TV show?
Oh, the Johnny Cash show. Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
Oh, no awareness of that.
Yeah, he had a TV show for probably a decade.
No kidding?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was him playing music and having guests on playing music and just talking about things.
Oh, wow. I bet that was awesome.
And I don't know if his show style lended towards the show, or if the TV show made the concert the way it, because they're very similar in the bootlegs I have.
Okay.
As far as how it kind of has the feel of a television show, and the way he's talking and bringing people out to do songs with him, and then going back and then talking to the crowd about different things and jokes here and there.
God, did the TV show it didn't even get a mention in the movie, right?
No,
not at all.
No, and that's Walk the Line. I mean, they did a pretty good job on it, but there's a bunch left out. It's my only qualm with it, because I knew too much about Johnny before that movie came out. Because by the time that came out, I'd read Johnny's autobiography.
Okay.
I'd listened to a bunch of the music, and so I had a real good feel for it, and I actually thought they did a good job.
Right.
If you're not, steeped in knowledge It's a good movie.
It's a good movie. I didn't like the fact that I walked away from it feeling like I didn't like him as much. Because
Johnny's a flawed person.
Well, of course, but
is.
it's like I don't know. I don't want to go on a tangent about it, but definitely not steeped in knowledge. I had Classic Cash, I think is the name of his greatest hits.
There's a ton of them.
Well, this one's 16 tracks or so, and like just literally they're all just absolute bangers.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I got a couple of his studio. I pivoted at one point and didn't go any deeper. But I went from zero knowledge to tremendous amount of respect just from that handful of records, and that's where I was when Walk the Line came out. And I'm like, Jesus, guys, like.
Yeah, and reading, I had read the autobiography because that's written by Cash, so it's an auto. I'd read that beforehand, and that paints a real telling picture. There's a lot of struggles in his life.
Sure.
And he obviously he had some demons. He also did some good stuff too.
Yeah. Wasn't his dad a piece of shit in that movie? Like,
yeah.
Just never accepted him and was mean
and that's kind of the way he portrays him in the autobiography too.
Okay.
I thought that was one thing that they didn't really stray on that.
Sure.
My biggest issue with the movie was the stuff that was left out.
Right.
I'll say.
Right.
And again, that goes back to me having dug in a little bit before.
Right.
So,
right. Well, good stuff. I was very, very pleased that this was on your list because, as I said, I didn't even know. The VH1 Storytellers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've heard that, but I don't think I ever sat down and turned one. Anyway, so we leap from we stay in the same year. By the way, New Year's Day, that was put out on New Year's Day. Cash and Willie. Because they both came out in 98, so I had to check release dates. So March 13th, however, 2.5 months later, Elephant Riders, Clutch.
Yes.
Who I had never heard of before.
I absolutely adore this band.
But there's Tim Solt.
Guitarist.
He sounds like he listened to a lot of Frank Zappa at some point in his life. Now, I didn't see that mentioned anywhere, but just I got a lot of Zappa influence coming out of his sound and his tone and his style.
I could see that because within the band also, there's a pretty strong jazz influence because their drummer, JP, I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name, but if you listen to them talk about their influences and different stuff, I've heard several interviews, especially with the drummer, I think Salt as well, but they credit Miles Davis, John Coltrane, a lot of your old classic blues guys.
Interesting.
So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I really like with Tim Salt's work. He's rocking Gibsons that I've always loved.
Yeah.
And the effects he used, because I love it. The selling point with this band for me is their lead singer, though.
Okay.
He just is. I think Neil Fallon, he strikes me as a dude that I could sit down and drink 3 cases of beer with.
Nice.
Because he's just laid back. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. The way he writes his lyrics, the style, and how he paints his pictures and tells his stories, and is willing to use any word in the dictionary. There's nothing off limits.
Okay.
I have learned words from Neil Fallon. Okay.
Very nice.
But and I would find this out later because this was the first band I dug into, and again, I picked albums that would kind of change how my music taste goes, and it would lead me down different paths. This album, you said you weren't familiar with the band. Third album, the first 4 are all on 4 different labels.
Oh, weird.
No one quite knew what to do with them and how to
market them.
Yeah, market them.
Okay.
So 4 albums, 4 different labels. This is the third one. There's an EP before this that is on this label too, but that's Just if you're talking about full-length studio albums. To me, this is the first one that hits closer to the Clutch as I know them, as kind of as they would turn into be and continue to progress.
And continue to put out music. They've got 13 of them, and one of them just came out last year.
Oh yeah, Sunrise on Slider Beach is a good album.
Nice.
But yeah, and they've grown with each record.
Sure.
But you can hear the differences, especially in the first 4. You got different producers almost every time. The producer for this album would come back and help them later.
Interesting.
And I think that's part of the reason. I think they liked him, and I think that's part of the reason why this sounds closer to their truer sound, now that I know them better.
Right.
But this album, we're talking about our different formats. My brother had 98 S10, bought it new. Had a tape player. And there was a Clutch mix, and it was heavy on this album. So we'd go do stuff, and they did a lot of times we'd be listening to the Elephant Riders.
Nice.
Different songs on this. Oh boy. Well, I don't think anyone can fact check me on this. I'm going to say the Yeti was the first song on side 2.
Okay.
It was the Soap Makers or the Yeti. It was one of the songs on this album. I remember every time we turned over, I'd be like, "Yeah, this is a good one."
My jam.
I've been waiting for this. Yeah,
Well,
good tunes.
I made one note about one track, and it's track 8, Wishbone, and they just fucking get after it. Like,
yes,
very impressive. Like,
yes, they really do. This is one of those things too that this album has a hidden song which you have written down, but it is
the 12-minute finisher.
Yes. Roughly 8 minutes of that is air.
Nice,
but it's not listed on the CD cover.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's like a hidden track.
And
you don't get that anymore with the way artists now will put out singles and all this and that, and using your streaming platforms, which, like I said, it's great. It's a double-edged sword, though. You lose some of the art, some of the cool things like that.
I gotta say, though, as much as I like Wishbone, the treat of the record for me was Delfio, Wynton Marsalis' brother, Delfio, on the trombone on track 9, Crackerjack.
Yeah.
Just absolutely crushes it. So good.
Not only does he just murder that, if you're listening to the album and its progression, that trombone comes out of left field.
That's why I was like, what the fuck? Where'd you come from?
Like, I am okay with this, but I did not see this coming.
No, it fits. It fits right there.
Yes. This album is where I really started looking at lyrics and how they're written, how a songwriter's telling a story.
Okay.
Because track number 7 always stood out to me because I'm like, this is a great song. But if you listen to the words, he is talking about being mundane, living in the burbs. He's like we could have a grand old time taking the trash out on Thursday. But it works. The way he places it, the way he words it, everything, it works. Wishbone's similar in that respect. The way he words about breaking the wishbone. And so how this kind of changed my music perception, because I liked heavier rock and stuff,
sure,
even before I discovered this, and this just filed right in, and I liked them, and we're riding around in my brother's S10 is like says 98, so this is the newest thing. I've got 4 albums to dig through with them at that point, but I would start looking for things and reading interviews, and because he's the lead singer, I saw a bunch of them from Neil Fallon.
Okay.
That's typical. You want to talk to a band, you talk to the lead singer because it's the voice that people identify with.
Yeah.
It's generally
oftentimes the face too.
Right.
Yeah.
More often than not. Come to find out, Tim Fallon loves Tom Waits.
Oh.
And if you look at their lyrics, you can see a shocking similarity in how they style their lyrics and tell their stories.
Nice.
And those are 2 songwriters that both of them, no word in the dictionary is ruled out.
Absolutely not.
No, I
just did an episode a little while back that featured the whole Tom Waits discography, And
It's fascinating.
17 records, a lot of stuff to take in.
Yeah, there's a lot, but they have ways of somehow saying the same story or the same concept and making it sound different.
Okay.
Finding ways to be colorful without having to be profane or shocking.
Sure. There's a lot of value in there.
And that's a trick. Yeah. That's a neat trick to do. And this is the album that got me looking into that. Because from the interviews with Neil Fallon, that's where I was like, who the heck is Tom Waits? What is this Bone Machine album? So that gets me
That's your launch point for Tom Waits was Bone Machine?
based off a Neil Fallon interview.
Wow.
Because they asked him, what are the 5 CDs you listen to when you're on tour?
Oh, okay.
And at the time, one of them was Bone Machine. So I'm like, who are these dudes? Who is this?
That is a wild record.
Who's Tom Waits?
Yeah.
And I get into it, and suddenly I have the earth dying screaming, and I'm like, intriguing.
Right. Nice.
And Tom Waits. Fallon does this too. The ability to paint the picture and knowing how to place lyrics. Waits is so masterful at that. And he does it with the voice that comes straight out of a choir teacher's nightmare.
Right.
It's so gravelly.
His first 2 records are
gravelly and broken.
Are smoother
most of the time.
Yes.
You know, and you're right. Even all the way up to Small Change, his voice is relatively smooth and pretty good. But as the years carried on and the bottles of bourbon were thrown away, it became very gravelly. And both of these two also are so good at using non-verbal vocals.
So, like space where you would expect lyrics to be?
Sounds, noises.
Okay.
You know, ooh, ah.
Ooh,
yes,
ah, ah. Yes. Absolutely.
You know, there's a song on Robot Hive Exodus. It's Neil Fallon uses binary. It's computer coding that's all ones and zeros. But he's writing a song about computer geeks taking over. So the chorus, he goes into 1001100101.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he's using binary, but because it's not set, he can maintain his time, fit within the song, do something very unique that is not so you can't look that up with Webster.
No.
But it's extremely unique, and I think he got that from Tom Waits.
Okay.
Because Waits is really good at using tones of voice,
right,
sounds, and working it in and keeping it in time, but still making a point.
Yes.
And furthering the story that he's telling.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Neil Fallon gets that. And it's one of my favorite aspects of Neil Fallon's lyrics.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, I might have to poke around a little bit more at them if what you're saying is true. Because man, Waits is one of a kind.
Waits is special. And I love his music. The catalog is so diverse.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you got I've mentioned Bone Machine. It's got a grungy, dirty rock and roll feel to it, but you also have an album early in his career like Small Change, where it's practically lounge.
I mean,
masterful. And even within those two, your lyrical styles and dialects are completely different because he's almost joking, farcical in Small Change. A lot more serious in Bone Machine.
Right.
A lot more driving points and harder stories.
Yeah.
So the evolution of a band, in Tom Waits and as a musician, and you'll find that if you go digging further into Clutch, like I said, the first 4 albums, different labels, different producers, they all sound a little bit different. And then you can kind of tell that they hit their stride.
Nice.
So with Blast Tyrant forward, everything after that, you can tell they hit their stride and they felt comfortable and were growing as a band instead of still trying to find things and figure things out.
I mean, it's This last week's episode, old high school buddy happened to be in town. Biggest Pearl Jam fan I know. So he had two, and No Code was one of them, and I think that was 4. And he said this is basically Pearl Jam in Crisis, because 10 was what it was, and then it's like, what's our follow up going to be? And then so Versus, and then Vitology. He just had a good way of describing that one. But then it's like, now what?
They transitioned.
I mean, but
it starts with that 4th album. They transitioned pretty good. I mean, it's not a slap in the face or blunt or hard transition, but listening to the albums chronologically, you can tell the 4th one's where they changed.
Interesting. Well, I think
and Sean and I have talked about that on our podcast too.
Really? Okay.
Did Sean mention a Pearl Jam record? Because Sean's also a huge Pearl Jam fan.
He might have had 10 on there,
but I don't. Like I said, I actually didn't listen to that episode.
It's quite all right. It's a big ask time wise. So, but if you think about how many bands make it to putting together a full length LP, and how many bands make it to record number 2?
Right.
And then 4, like it's a thing where you got to find that stride if this thing's gonna keep going. You know what I mean?
You really do, and I think it's going to be the last record we talk about. We'll touch back on that subject because I think that band.
Let's do it now. Feathers and Flesh, Avatar.
Is that our last one?
2016. Yes. 6th of 9 records.
Correct. And so we're talking about a band hitting their stride. For those of you that don't know who they are, like most of the free world.
Yeah, I did not. I also did not know. I had not heard of them, but I'm very pleased that you introduced me now.
Swedish metal band. And like, let me see, this was album 5?
6 of 9. 14 tracks, 67 minutes.
That's right.
So they had some stuff to say.
Album number 4. You talk about a band transitioning. If you listen to Avatar's back catalog and start kind of working through the chronology of the records, the 4th album's where you can tell they hit their stride.
Cool.
They'll even say that in interviews.
Nice.
Because
there's no shame in it. Why not admit it?
What you see now, because you see Johannes, their lead singer, in the face paint. And they generally have an outfit, is what I'm going to call it.
Okay.
Because it's not necessarily a costume,
okay.
but they're definitely
sure.
in sync with each other. That starts with the Black Waltz album. And it starts with, they did a video for one of the songs, and the director said, let's try face paint. And they liked it.
Interesting.
They watched the video, they were like, this fits. We like it. Let's keep doing that. So they did.
Okay.
And you got a couple albums. There's, like you said, the 6th album is the one we're going to talk about. So there's Black Waltz, there's Hail the Apocalypse, and then we have Feathers and Flesh. They felt like they'd hit their stride musically. They were very comfortable. They kind of had a look and a feel. So they decided that they wanted to do a concept album. Hadn't done that before. Decided the way they wanted to do it was to write an album based on a fable. So they spent some time...
Based on a fable that somebody else wrote? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, originally.
Okay.
So they spent some time looking through there, couldn't find anything that they really thought they liked or fit. So this dude, their lead singer, goes out, he's like, I'm just going to write one.
A fable.
So he writes Fable.
Okay.
Then writes the songs to go with the Fable.
Oh, so they initially looked at other people's stuff.
Yes.
Couldn't find it.
They initially went looking around and then ultimately decided to carry on with this idea. We're just going to write our own Fable. And then write the music to go with it.
Very cool.
So you have this great packaging, and I'd mentioned this earlier. It is as far as I love it when an artist goes the extra mile for the art.
Yeah.
Whether it's your fonts and artwork specifically, or in this instance where you put that even more extra effort to write a fable, to have someone do the artwork for everything for the characters in the fable. Because, very simplistically put, this fable is the creatures in the forest are fighting each other. One side is led by the eagle, one side is led by the owl. And that's how you get a song like The Eagle Has Landed. We're talking about the eagle. He's coming in, he's leading the charge. I'm here. I am the hero you've been looking for. Follow me. We're gonna fight the owl.
What, is that track 4? Eagle Has Landed?
3.
Great track.
So we're gonna fight the owl. We'll never have to deal with the moon again. It'll be sunny all the time. The Eagle's Landed.
I like all of his choices. Owl, eagle, moon, sun. Like those are. I love those elements of.
And even within it, though, he hits almost every layer because you have those. I want to say Black Waters. You have the wolf in there.
Okay.
Fiddler's Farewell. You're talking about the crickets.
Interesting.
Like they hit every level of the animal kingdom and,
cool.
and what you would consider a typical forest. So yeah, they write the fable. They get the artwork to go with it. They write the songs to go into the fable and where they see it into the story, and they released it in about every format possible.
Meaning?
Because you have the book.
Right. You brought some stuff. Hold it up for the camera.
Oh, I didn't even realize we're being recorded.
Oh, yes.
I had no clue. I'm just sitting here.
You didn't see me go over there and turn both of them on before I sat down?
I completely missed it.
Yeah, that's you, and I'm over here, so you can show the stuff
very good.
You brought if you want.
Yeah, and the reason I brought it was honestly so that you could see and know what I was talking about, because it sounds like a lot. It's a lot to process at first.
Yeah, are they all separate purchases, or was there a package?
Because you have, when you go through this fable, you have the lyrics, you have the fable, and then the lyrics of the song that go with it, and artwork throughout this, and it packages really well and tells this story that has a really sincere and kind of awful moral.
It's really sincere and what?
Kind of awful moral.
Oh, interesting.
And then they put out a version, which is actually very hard to find now, but I, the collecting music nerd, found it, where you can listen to their lead singer read through the story up to where a song fits in. Then you hear the song, and then he reads more of the fable. I call this an audio fable.
Yeah. What's the difference between the one you're holding and the one on the...
So, like I said, you can listen to the story, and the songs are the studio versions of the songs that fit into the story and where they fit in. And, it did really well with their fans, so they released a deluxe edition of the CD, and this is how I found out about it, because my brother... We're back to my brother, right?
Yeah.
My brother really liked, he's the one that discovered him and really liked him, was telling me about him. That bonus disc is a DVD of their set from Walkin' in 2015.
Wow.
So, and that's what...
They're set from...
Walkin' over a music festival in Europe.
Okay.
The Walkin' Music Festival.
Okay.
So they had a 45-minute set. They recorded it. That's the DVD from it.
Nice.
And when my brother's trying to tell me about this band, he goes, just watch. Because on YouTube, it also has clips from the 2015 Walkin'.
Okay.
So he pulls up a couple songs, and I'm like, these dudes are getting it. Like, the stage show is there. The voice is legitimate. That's not a studio. He's not...
auto-tune.
Yeah, he's not layering tracks or anything to make sure he can hit the high note here and then hit the low.
Interesting.
Their lead singer, he has an incredible vocal range. Musically, they can do it. And then back to how I love artists that put the extra nuance out there. The show itself.
Tell me.
They hit, like, when they hit Let It Burn in that set particularly, you have two guitar players, lead singer and the bass player, doing circle headbanging that I had not seen in years.
Where you're...
Like, they got long enough hair, they're whipping it around.
Okay.
And it leads.
I always just immediately go to, my neck. I feel
right. I do too, anymore at least. And they tie it into the music. So with
cool.
Let It Burn, one of my favorite drum fills I've ever heard, because they come in heavy, slow down for like half a second. There's this great drum fill, and they kick back in, and they're doing the circle headbanging. They're going at it. Half second, drum fill, going again.
Nice.
And then get into the lyrics of it. And like I said, Johannes has a great voice. So my brother played me a couple tracks off that, and I'm like, that's awesome. He goes, it's part of the Feathers and Flesh. So then I go dig into the record.
Right.
And I'm like, holy mercy. I dove in. I just went straight for all of it. And I want to say we're around 2018-ish. Maybe 2019 when I'm digging through all this.
Okay.
So as far as Avatar's career, I'm a little late to the party.
Yeah.
Because
you're here now.
And like I said, they're from Sweden, so they're not on this side of the pond very often.
Right.
Came overseas. They came over to do a tour. They didn't hit Kansas City. They hit St. Louis.
Okay.
My brother and I were like, we're going to go.
I mean, absolutely. If you didn't, I was going to be like, what?
Having seen this, we're just like, I got to see the spectacle in person.
Right.
I want to see
Where'd
this.
they play in the Lou?
Pops. Over in Sauget, Illinois, technically. It's just on the east side of St. Louis.
Okay.
That show is touring for Avatar, the record Avatar Country, which is their other concept album.
Okay.
In Avatar Country, that concept, they basically named the country after themselves, named the lead guitarist King. The story goes, the king saved the country through heavy metal.
Nice.
Like I said, I collect things. I have a snow globe of the king on a horse wielding a guitar. Okay.
Nice.
The video for Avatar Country, there's an individual laid up in the hospital, and they save him by putting headphones on and making him listen to Manowar.
Nice.
I mean, it's just all this little stuff. So you've got that, and every song on Avatar Country mentions the king.
Oh.
Like every title mentions the king in some way, form, or fashion.
Really?
And they're joking about it too, because
Sure.
like there's a segue where it's the king talking to the people, and he's talking about how he had a great bath that day, and a couple other little things, and he finishes up with and now for some volleyball.
Oh, funny.
It's a great big story and joke. Okay,
Huh.
So we go over to see him in St. Louis, and you drive to the other side of the state. You're going to get in there to see the whole show. So a couple of openers, and they were okay. Nothing that really caught me. Nothing that also, my ears weren't bleeding, so it wasn't bad. And we're walking around. We looked at the merch stand, and I was like, "That's pretty cool." They had the guys at the merch stand were dressed up in basically outfit and costume. Whatever. That didn't surprise me.
Right.
Saw their sound guy. The sound guy's dressed up. Whatever.
Right.
We're going for the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And we're just walking around, and I was like, wait a minute. Brandon, do you hear that? He goes, what? He goes, listen to the overhead. They had done a track that was Avatar radio to lead up to their set.
Oh.
And it was interviews with the king and people that had met the king. It was weather forecast for Avatar Country. It was all this little backstory and nuance about Avatar Country to lead up to their set.
That's fascinating.
And I'm just like, I've never heard of a band that went that far for the story.
Very cool.
Granted, Ghost is close as far as the story goes with them and their stuff. But like with Avatar, I listened to that and I was like, I already had dug in. I was sold. But I'm like, this just put them over the top.
Right?
Because that's special. That's next level.
That's very cool.
For your art.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And
like I said, and they make a joke of it too. Like they're having a good time. When you sign up for their fan club, in particular, if you order something from their store, your confirmation emails and all that stuff are addressed to Avatar Citizen.
Oh, funny.
And your name. And you're like the email for tracking. Your purchase is in the hands of a servant of the king.
Nice. Pulling out all the stops.
Shall receive it shortly.
Nice.
I went in there once, and because they had a sale on it, I was looking around. I put a couple things in the cart to see what it would total out to, and the shipping and all this. And
is
then
it all coming from overseas?
No, they have stores on both sides.
Okay.
So, but I didn't buy anything. Closed it out. Got an email from the Royal Department of Not Spying on You, but Totally Spying on You. We noticed that you left some things in your cart, and we really don't like littering. They are still there if you would like to purchase them. But I'm like, so like they're making up names of departments. Like they're just having fun with this and having a grand old time.
I think that always resonates with a fan and says to the fan that you care about us and us enjoying ourselves. And
right.
Is this also kind of a thank you for being a fan?
Right. And then it's just, I have such great appreciation for that. For this album, they were stateside and they did a spot on a radio show. It was actually acoustic. It sounded really good.
I bet.
But again, the term sounds kind of screwy, but they dress in uniform. And they show up to this radio interview. They're all rocking sandals, cargo shorts, and Hawaiian shirts.
Really?
Just random out of the blue. And they're having fun.
Yeah, of
course.
They're
sticking with the idea when they're having fun. And they were asked about it. Like the lady that was doing the interview, she goes, so, I understand, you guys always have uniform on stage and you come in here also in uniform. Where'd you get this idea or where'd you get that? And, did you buy that back in Sweden? Is that, and Johannes was like, no. We found these at a Walmart in Ohio. like he's even making jokes like on the state side that resonates with United States humor.
Nice. I love it.
I think Johannes is incredibly smart. He speaks like 3 languages. He can make jokes that
the very first thing that came to mind when you said that. I was like, that sounds like a smart dude.
Yeah, he'll make jokes that are relevant to the culture he's around.
That is very smart.
So like the show at Walk-In, he will talk to the crowd in different languages.
Wow.
Because he knows he has a large population of different languages out there.
Huh.
So, he'll talk a little bit in Swedish or American or I believe it's German is the third language.
Okay. That seems like it would track, yeah.
But it's just incredibly smart. They strike me as if they are having fun, and this album got me back into heavy metal because I kind of stepped away for a little bit, but my brother showed me this, and I'm like, wow. These guys can do it, and they're putting the art and the story with it, and I have such great appreciation for that. And at this point, I've seen them 5 times.
No kidding.
I think twice in Kansas City.
Okay.
St. Louis. I went to Wichita once. I thought there was another one. Oh, Omaha recently.
Nice.
Yeah, recently. Up at the Admiral. Good little spot for a show, by the way.
Okay. Cool.
Easy drive up, easy drive back. My brother and I have also already planned on going to see them in St. Louis in November because they went back overseas and then they're coming back to the States and they're still not hitting Kansas City, so we're going to St. Louis.
Hey.
And that times out beautifully because that date is the 23rd at, it's not the Pageant, it's the place that's hooked up to it. Because there's a place right beside them.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I've only been to the Pageant. I don't even think I was aware there was a place.
Yeah, it's right. If you go to their website, both places are on the same website.
Okay. Interesting.
The reason I know this, the day before, Royal Blood, who also does not come this side of the pond, is at the Pageant.
Oh.
So my brother and I are going to go out there on Friday, get some grub, catch Royal Blood show, stay the night, nose around, catch an Avatar show, come home.
After the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't like sticking, or if we're within 4 hours, we'd rather come home and sleep in our own bed.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I've got a dog, so getting someone to watch the dog a little bit I can do that. But if I can get home sooner, it works better.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's the Royal Blood show is the day after my birthday in September.
Nice.
So he's picking up one of my tickets there too.
Hey.
So I'm paying for one ticket. I'm going to get two shows from bands on the other side of the pond that are incredible.
Awesome.
There's another one too for anyone listening. Go check out Royal Blood.
Where are they from?
UK.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's England specifically, but
right.
UK.
Okay.
Very, 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 very talented band. It's becoming more popular or more prevalent, I should say, a two-piece. And
a two-piece band?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen them once live before, and wow.
Interesting.
I was delivering pizzas for extra money at the time when I found out about them, because my friend Joseph told me. And he said, check this band out. At the time, they only had one album out. And the way things are now, I was able to pull it up on, at the time it was Google Play, and stream that first album while I was driving around Lee Summit delivering pizzas.
Nice.
And I thought to myself, man, I really like these guys. And Joseph had told me they're two-piece. I'm like, I really like these guys. I like the way Kerr writes songs. I like his voice. I like the sound to it. I'm still curious though. Are they a studio band? Because I know they're a two-piece. Do they have studio musicians in there helping fill that out?
Right.
So a week or two later, I was doing stuff around the house, and I pulled them up on YouTube because it's smart TV. Pulled them up on YouTube, still doing stuff around the house, and something caught my eye, and I stopped and I looked at TV, and I was like, wait a minute. A, that's only two of them on stage, so they can do it. B, that's a 4-string bass. Because I'd heard of two-piece bands where it was a guitar player and a drummer. I'd never heard of one that was a bass player and a drummer. And after digging into him, come to find out he's got the head on his amp. He's got two of the channels set up to where they're bringing the strings higher.
Oh,
so that he can catch the low end of a guitar and high end of a bass.
Smart.
And I've used that band, the song "Don't Tell," so many times at bars to see. Because you can recognize a music fan at a bar if you can get a hold of the jukebox.
Right.
If you can get a few songs on the touch tunes or whatever, you can recognize this. And I've done it several times with "Don't Tell," and caught people going, "That's a good guitar riff."
Right.
In the chorus.
Two-piece band.
And I like one of those times specifically, I was still at Minsk because it was after a shift, and I was just having a beer. And it was one of our coworkers, and he said that exact same thing. He goes, "That's an incredible guitar riff in that song. Did you hear that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I heard it, but slight problem. That's a bass." He's like, "What?" Like just about lost his mind because he didn't realize that kind of riff would come out of a bass.
The only two-piece outfit I'm familiar with they're whatever, Benevento Russo duo, and they were keys and drums.
Okay.
And he could get different sounds out of his kind of.
I could see that with keys,
guitarish
very much
sound.
So.
Yeah.
But no, there's a handful.
Okay.
Local H is two-piece. The Black Keys started as two-piece.
Right.
Everything before Brothers is just two of them.
Right. That's true.
And again, but most of those examples, Larkin Poe currently tours. They're a two-piece, two girls. But again, that's guitar, drums. The Cold Stairs started out as a two-piece. They've been on our podcast.
Oh, nice.
I dig them. They've recently expanded to 3 and still sound great, but they started as a two-piece. But again, it's guitar, drums. So almost all the examples I encountered before that were guitar, drums. And here's Mike Kerr like, no, I'm gonna do this with the bass.
Nice.
Funny thing about it too. And I found this out from the Cold Stairs. was listening to an interview with their lead singer, and he used the same trick Mike Kerr does, but in reverse.
Which is,
Mike Kerr with Royal Blood, he's running it through his head, and he's got 2 channels that are bringing strings higher. I'm drawing a complete blank on his name. The lead singer of the Cold Stairs was doing the opposite. He was taking a couple strings and bringing them lower, so he could catch the rhythm with his guitar better.
Wow.
And still have a couple strings there to do a riff or a solo if he wanted.
Sure.
And, if he could design it.
Man.
But they were basically, I've listened to interviews from both of them now. They're using the same trick, just in reverse.
Oh, funny.
I thought the same thing. I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, ChemTrails with Adam and Sean, Tuesdays, 7 and 10 Central, counterclockwise KC Radio. One of the musicians I had on recently, we did talk a little bit about what is on whose plate, as like a 4 or a 5 piece outfit. And, like somebody's got the engineering and recording and somebody's like social media and some, it's you get. So my question to you is, do you personally have aspirations for ChemTrails, or is there a direction the two of you have already discussed that you would like to see it go, or is it just one episode at a time and what happens?
Right now, we're more one episode at a time.
Okay.
Because we've had some conversations. As we'd mentioned earlier, Sean's got his fingers in a lot of things, and he's got a few ideas that he'd like to go for. And at the moment, ChemTrails is something good to keep going with that doesn't interfere with anything and can be included in some of his ideas.
Sure.
Down the road.
Yeah.
So right now, it's more of a one episode at a time, and we still have a small army of albums that we can both talk about, within each of our catalogs.
Nice.
And when we can get interviews, we can do things like that to beef things up and get something a little bit different as far as the listener's concerned.
Yeah. If it is an episode where you're talking albums, what's the process like for you to put together your portion of what you're going to bring to the table?
To be brutally honest, it's very much seat of the pants.
That's fair.
Both of our schedules are pretty hectic, and a lot of times what happens is I send a message out, let's say on a Monday, and say, what's your schedule like for recording? And then we'll kind of figure out our schedules and figure out what we're doing. And then it'll be one of us will ask the other, what album you're talking about.
Oh, you each bring one.
Yes.
Okay.
And and that varies. That's not always the same person. Because it could be a situation where maybe I just pick something up and I say, hey, I want to talk about this, and he'll go, all right, I'll pick something that works with it.
Cool.
Or if we haven't done anything, made a major purchase or already targeted an idea, then it's one of us saying, hey, what album would you like? And the other going, all right, I've got a couple options that might work with that. Okay. What do we think?
Cool.
And then a lot of that stuff, because we have the albums and its bands we know, I don't have to take a lot of time or worry about justifying or working time in to make notes on stuff. Sure. Because I'm talking about my album.
Right.
So it's going to be one I know, and I have a broad enough base. If I know what he's doing, I'll give it a listen or two, kind of like what it sounds like you did with my selection. Give him a listen, so you can have a feel for it. And if there's a question that comes up, maybe write it down to make sure to bring it up. Yeah. But for the most part, a lot of what you hear on ChemTrails is natural conversation.
Okay.
It's, we take the time to pick the albums out, and sometimes we plan a little bit ahead. Like, we do have some ideas, and last year we did a 1-year anniversary where we went through what we did in that first year and picked songs about it and some of our favorite moments and different things we did.
Nice.
And whatever.
I like that.
So we may do that again soon because we're coming up on that 2-year that we mentioned. And we've had ideas that we might still go through with as far as going to places to record, because sometimes that's fun to do.
Right.
I think I mentioned, we were able to record at the Westport Saloon, in one of their last nights. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Kind of nice to do.
And make sure you remember to bring all of your shit.
Right.
If you forget something,
you're toast.
Yep.
Or if you have a headset that doesn't work.
Right.
And there's that, and we work on things and have some ideas, but it's also right now too. KCTK radio is kind of in and out on their they're airing. I think they had some personal things come up and weren't doing anything for a little while, so we were still able to go through and carry on with the KCTK or not KCTA, counterclockwise KC.
Right.
My bad. And not miss a beat on our end. But like I said, but with outside of that, Sean is very busy in making sure he gets badass records.
Sure.
Vibe talking.
Yeah.
The scene.
Yep.
With Pretty Boy.
Yep.
And getting all that lined up and into a schedule and all that. So right now, ChemTrails is a good thing to do one episode at a time. And when we have an idea, we can work it in there. And when things are busy, like I've had a really busy, hectic run the last 4 or 5 weeks, and before that, Sean had a busy run,
right?
Where he was out of town for a week and a half, 2 weeks. So right now, where we're at with the one show at a time, it works for us, and
cool.
we can keep doing this, and so it's something we both enjoy, and hopefully the people listening, enjoy.
What about outside of the podcast, goals or bucket list items for you?
Right now, I'm just some of the recent busyness is will affect my living. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to maintain on that respect and get some things wrapped up to where I have a little more freedom going down the road.
Sure.
And catch some shows as I can.
Nice.
Like we talked about earlier, hanging out at Starlight with the Revivalist and seeing the Rival Sons, and and I've already got plans for September. Go over to St. Louis, catch a couple, and and it's there's some shows I'd like to see. Some other ones coming through that I'm just kind of waiting, biding my time, and
cool.
All that.
So imagine if you would, there is, sometimes in a place you'll see a first aid kit on the wall, or maybe you have one in your closet, your hall closet or something like that. But imagine a first aid kit for the world. You get to open it, and the thing the world needs the most right now is in there for you to take out and administer to the world. What is it?
Empathy.
Okay. I love that. Right? Zero hesitation.
The ability to empathize and to analyze, understand, and react, whether you agree or not. But
a different deal.
The ability to understand and listen to someone and their point of view, and then be able to incorporate that so that you know where they're coming from and why they're thinking or doing. So yeah, to me, it would be empathy.
I love it, man.
You don't have to be all peace, love, and happiness, but if you understand where someone's coming from, then you have a chance at finding that middle ground where we can have agreeable conversations.
Right.
We can make decisions that work for more people instead of just you.
Right. That's huge.
So that's where I would go with that.
Sometimes my boy will get frustrated at the batting cages, and one of the thing that I say often to him to get him back on track is, hey man, Hall of Famers hit 300, meaning
you fail 70% of the time.
Right. So, in life we whiff on things all the time too. What is there one occurrence or experience in your life that if you could, you'd go back and tweak or do differently?
Well, nothing jumps out at mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing immediately.
Sure.
Because I would, looking back now, just a quick overview, it would probably be getting my career path set sooner.
Okay. I had that as a question for you, like since graduating high school, what...
And we touched on this briefly, but growing up was, money was tight.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of strained situations. My first paycheck paid the water bill.
That air mom's house?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, things were always tight.
Yeah.
And I don't throw that out a lot because it's easy for someone to hear that statement and think I'm looking for sympathy when that's, to
Just
me,
how it was.
in that moment, that's what you do.
Yeah.
You know, I bought like a CD and paid the water bill.
Nice.
You know,
nice.
so, and up to that, and
money well spent on both fronts.
and up to that point too, I spent a lot of time doing things with my grandfather because he always around work did little odd jobs to make extra money. And you know, like one summer, there was a microburst around Lee Summit, which is code for a tornado that the meteorologist didn't see beforehand. Picked this barn up, moved it, shifted it. It was no good anymore. Owner of the property wanted it torn down, hauled off, taken away. And my grandpa got the job. Needed some help. So me and my cousin, who's almost literally a month older than I am, so we're about basically same age, we're both like 13, 14. We helped him for a week.
Nice.
Got it done. But Grandpa always paid.
Okay.
So, I mentioned the first paycheck, paying the bills. It's not necessarily the first piece of money I had. It wasn't the first time I had the opportunity where I could go out and buy something for myself. I'd had that before.
Sure.
You know, like in that example, I want to say I got $140 or $150 from my grandpa. And at 13, 14, that's a fortune.
Yes.
I think I bought CDs. I know I at least bought a couple.
Right.
But, so growing up like that, when I graduated high school, my brother's 6.5 years older and had moved out. I thought it was more important to me at the time to stay at home and keep working, and keeping working and helping out made it very challenging to go do a full college schedule.
Yeah, of course.
So I didn't work towards that, and I didn't do that. I didn't go to college until I was almost 30.
Okay.
That would be the one thing where I think I might change that around. In hindsight, it wasn't nearly as unmanageable as I thought.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I probably could have done a full-time job. In fact, when I did go to college, it was right around the time I lost my mom, and I was in college, and, well, guess what? I was working a full-time job, going to college, taking care of my sister, had more responsibility and stress than I would have coming out of high school.
Oh, my gosh.
So, in hindsight, that's probably a decision I would have done. I think I would have done that differently.
Okay, interesting.
I think I would have gone ahead and enrolled, at least get some basic credits out of the way, keep into, maybe not full-time, but keep working and
what has been like
keep and do the school thing and get into an actual career sooner.
What has been your career path up until today, or recently?
I had a couple of retail jobs coming out of college, and then I got into food.
Okay.
Service industry. It's more of a job than people want to admit.
I mean, I did 20 years myself.
Yeah, so you understand the frustration when someone says, "Oh, are you ever going to get a real job?"
No one ever said that to me. I mean, beyond coworkers under the same roof, like, hey, are we ever, but nobody from the outside ever pointed in and asked that question.
And then that may be, I don't know, were you front of house or back of house?
Back.
That's why.
Okay.
Front of house gets that a lot more.
Okay.
From what I can tell.
I see.
But so I got into the service industry, and I worked my way up at Atlanta Bread and became manager there, and then went on to manage some 54th Streets for several years.
Okay.
When I decided to go to school, I stepped down and did some serving and bartending at different places to work through school and all that. And the degree is an associate's in computer-aided drafting.
Okay.
So that's what I do now.
Oh, nice.
I got a job with DH Pace doing
Quotes?
Details.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Detailing jobs that we'd already been awarded. Going through there, reading through sets of plans and what do we need for the doors and windows in this job.
Sure.
And that job.
Yeah.
And moved on into more drafting and drawing, which is what I went to school for.
Okay.
And that's what I currently do. Do structural formwork drawings for the formwork to pour concrete.
Okay.
Beams, columns,
Nice.
all that kind of good stuff.
Very cool.
There's a fabulous looking W column in Atlanta that I drew and designed.
Nice.
It's a W. Sits on the corner of the street, like blatantly how you can't miss this
Wow.
thing. And it's one of the few, because a lot of our work isn't finished because it'll end up getting covered up.
Oh.
Your slabs and beams get covered up by
Sure.
a secondary slab or a different flooring, and the underside, your soffit, is generally covered up by some kind of ceiling structure. Unless you're in a garage, and even then, you don't have to be too wildly cute with the finish on that
Right.
and all that. But a W column that sits in the corner in the front of the building, you do. So you got to be very careful with that, and I'm pretty proud of that one. And I got to see it in person.
Nice.
Because we do they'll send us out on field visits to go talk to the superintendents and the guys that we're sending the drawings to, so we know what they're working with and what they're wanting.
Nice. Well, I got one more for you, and we'll get you out of here. And it's the hokiest of all. Lunch with anyone, dead or alive. Who's it going to be and why?
Anyone?
Anyone.
Boy, that's tough. God. Just to talk to someone, if there's a purpose to the conversation, it'd be someone along the lines of Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Someone that had a great vision, obviously very well thought out, and was interested in everyone getting better.
Wow.
If you're going for entertainment value,
Sure.
like just a conversation, someone you'd just like to talk to,
Right.
it'd be Neil Fallon or Tom Waits, because I think they're both individuals I could sit down and be comfortable with and talk about anything.
Right.
And enjoy the conversation and enjoy the company.
For sure. Fantastic answers.
It's one of my favorite stories about Clutch, because I'd read the interviews and stuff. I was listening to Neil Fallon and Tim Salt, and the interviewer said, there's so many fans that appreciate what you do, like with the different beers you've helped brew and your music shows and all this other and that. And they all think it would be great to hang out with you, like before the show or after the show. What is that like? What would it be like to hang out with Clutch? And Neil Fallon said, well, if you're really interested in listening to the Allman Brothers and eating a ham sandwich with a bunch of middle-aged men, then you'll fit right in.
Nice. That's a classic answer.
Yeah, I agreed. I thought it was fantastic. I'm like, honestly, sign me up, Neil.
Right?
I'd love me a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
Allman Brothers are great.
Absolutely.
I'm fine with this.
Right? Some Jessica in the background with some melted Swiss on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
if we're getting fancy, toast some sourdough.
Right. Adam Browning, I really appreciate you being here, taking the time, come sit here and chat music with me. ChemTrails with Adam and Sean, Mondays, 7 p.m. Again, Tuesdays. Sorry, God, I got it right the whole time until
I was going to say,
Tuesdays. Let's try it again. ChemTrails with Adam and Sean, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Central, again at 10 p.m. Central, counterclockwise KC Radio, which you can access via Live 365 or the TuneIn app. You should tune in and check them out because you guys have a good time. I was kind of dipping in and out of a few episodes, and you're just a lot of BSing and hanging out and talking and joking. I didn't get to a point where I was like, oh, he brings an album, and I tried to find some bio that would explain that somewhere on Facebook, but I didn't come across it.
It's something that we're working on that a little bit because we've had to change formats a couple times.
Oh, okay.
We started out on KCTK Radio, which they want it in one lump file. So we did things a little bit differently there, and as we've evolved into the counterclockwise radio, because there are commercials involved with the way he's set up, we've now broken it up into 3 segments to where it's the opening segment where we talk about what's going on, things we've posted, ideas, stories, whatever we've got going on. Then it's a segment for an album. There's
Nice.
a segment for the other album.
Okay.
So it breaks up a little bit
Gotcha.
easier in that respect. But we enjoy what we're doing, and when you listen, it's natural conversation.
Sure.
It's very, very much so.
Absolutely.
And kind of like what we had here today.
Right.
I had a few notes just to make sure I wasn't, misleading the folks.
I know. I took a I don't even 6 or 7 pages with me out to Sean's, and just they came out twice, but 99.9% of the time they're in my pocket.
Right.
I felt it was like Linus and his security blanket. I felt good having him, but I was also glad that I was able to just not really.
Right. And for me, if I'm doing something unique, like I said, we've had a few different interviews. I will obviously take the time to put the notes there, because also, even if I want the conversation to be natural and I don't, want to be looking down on a script, writing it down for me helps me remember.
Same.
So, if I'm talking to Jared Nichols and I want to make reference to that first album, I'm much better off if I've written down what the name of that album is.
Absolutely.
So I'm not stuttering or trying to look through the notes.
I mean, I'm so much so that there have been a number of times where, people have stuff come up and they've got to move their date, or sometimes people just decide, I don't want to do it after all, whatever. But I've had some, times where I've prepped, and then I wind that interview doesn't happen. So I go and I do 13 more, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden that person's back on the books again. And I got to go back to the notes that are now old. I type them up, change the font to huge and print it out. And then I can just sort of rip one sheet after the other. But it's like I have to get in there and have interaction with those words and phrases again to bring the stuff, I'm not just going to be like, 6 months ago I wrote down that this was there,
Right. Like I said, it helps commit things to memory for me too.
So, ChemTrails with Adam and Sean, Counterclockwise, KC Radio. Check it out. Appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Bye.